that would snake its way from the Bakken oil fields, taking fracked oil from North Dakota, through South Dakota, Iowa, Illinois, and then hook up with a pipeline to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the Standing Rock Sioux of North Dakota, they're not unusual in not wanting it near their reservation. The people of Bismarck, North Dakota, the capital, said no. The people of Mandan, North Dakota, they said no. You know, to this private oil corporation that wants to make its profit in this way. But the people of Standing Rock Sioux were not so lucky. And they said they're particularly concerned about it would tunnel under the Missouri River, the longest river in North America, and could contaminate the water of some 17 million people downstream, native and non-native alike, and would desecrate their sacred burial grounds. They don't call themselves protesters, they call themselves water protectors. And so the months meant the growing of the resistance. There were so many people at Sacred Stone Camp, the resistance camp on Ladonna's property. They built more and more, and Red Warrior Camp and others, and soon thousands of people came. Native Americans from Latin America, from Washington, from the United States, and then First Nations from Canada. The largest unification of Native American tribes in decades, and many non-Native allies. And people started getting arrested. Now, we went there on Labor Day weekend, and we should have been there earlier. We were covering it earlier, but that's when we could go. But let's think about that year. This is 2016. This is the presidential election year. This is when the critical issues of the day are supposed to get discussed. I mean, I remember in the general election debates, the moderators, I don't call them journalists, I call them media personalities. Did one of them ask a question about climate change?
No.
I mean, let alone Dakota Access Pipeline, this epic struggle that's going on in North Dakota. Did anyone ask about the issue that concerns the fate of the planet? Is it because these networks where the debates take place are brought to you by the oil, gas, and coal companies? Well, they should, if they say that's not the reason, then prove us wrong. You know, we need a media that is not brought to us by the weapons manufacturers when we cover war, not brought to us by the oil, gas, coal companies or the nuclear companies when we cover climate change, not brought to us by the insurance industry or big pharma when we cover healthcare. It's straightforward. But we went there, and what we found was amazing. I mean, the protests, people, hundreds of people would walk along these back prairie roads of North Dakota. They would often begin with a water ceremony, glasses of water, and they would come up against this fully militarized rural sheriff's department. And sometimes the native elders would hold out these glasses of water and say, these are for you as well as us. These are for your children, not just our children. They saw themselves as doing it for everyone. And they'd be met by the full, massive array of, I mean, MRAP's tanks. You know, they'd be hit with tear gas, and you know this from Ferguson, right? 2014, a young African-American teenager, Michael Brown, is gunned down by Darren Wilson, a white police officer, left his corpse baking in the hot sun hour after hour after hour in front of residential houses, residents seeing, I mean, what do they take us as, they are thinking? Do they think we are animals? And this uprising that ensued was met by these fully militarized police departments of Ferguson and the surrounding towns of Missouri. You know, we were just at Seattle Town Hall last Wednesday night. A few weeks ago, Juan and I interviewed Norm Stamper in our studio. He's the former police chief of Seattle who presided over the Battle of Seattle in 1999. This police uprising against innocent, peaceful protesters, tens of thousands of high schoolers, environmentalists, Teamsters, and farmers, and doctors and nurses who were concerned about the World Trade Organization, concerned that the supranational organization that's run by corporate bureaucrats could overturn the laws of democratically elected legislatures. And they were met by massive amounts of tear gas, so much so that the Seattle Police Department had to go out of state to get more gas. People were picking up the rubber bullets by the handful. The police department was saying, we're not shooting rubber bullets. So that's what CNN would report at CNN.com. But IndieMedia.org, which was born then, was showing the photographs of the rubber bullets, gobs of them. So IndieMedia.org got more hits than CNN.com. It was really the birth of a lot of independent media. It was virtually a police uprising. And Seattle had never seen anything like this. We were doing our first TV broadcast from there. So after the Battle of Seattle, hundreds, well over 600 people were arrested. They were jailed. Stamper was thrown out, as he should have been. I mean, what happened there? Chief Stamper now says it was the worst mistake of his life. He says he is extremely regretful about what happened, about the police behavior. And he said, how do you think police departments are going to behave when you're fully militarized? Do you see everything out there as the enemy? He said, we forgot there are children, our teachers, our librarians, our doctors, our lawyers, our nurses. We forget this. You know, you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And now, Chief Stamper is a leading spokesperson for police reform in this country. Never assume, based on a person's position, what position they will take. So, back to North Dakota. We're covering these mass protests, and then on Saturday of Labor Day weekend, well, there was a judge who was ruling the following week in a case that was the tribe versus the Justice Department. And he asked the tribe to give him a map of what they felt were their sacred sites, their burial grounds. So he would decide based on this. And they gave him that map, and he handed it over to Energy Transfer Partners, which owns the Dakota Access Pipeline. And when the Native Americans came up to the site that they had designated as their burial grounds, and they were going to plant native flags there, they saw the bulldozers operating at full tilt. And they were shocked. Bulldozers on Labor Day weekend, they thought that they would not be there on that holiday weekend. And also, they were at the site that they designated on the map. They'd leapfrogged over from the area way down the road, and they were excavating, destroying the sites they had shown were their sacred sites. They were furious. And the people came up on the property, first women with their children, native elders, men, boys, girls. They all come up. More come from the resistance camps. They're demanding the bulldozers pull back. I mean, the acts of bravery here in these kinds of protests, peaceful protests, they come up on the property, these massive machines. Do you know how dangerous this is when they're operating to stand in front of them? You know, we're filming. I was there with my colleague, Laura Gottesdiener, producer of Democracy Now!, John Hamilton, our producer and videographer, and Dennis Moynihan. The bulldozers are operating. I'm standing in front of them. I could only think of March 16, 2003. It was 3 days before the Iraq War. It was another part of the Middle East, in Gaza, in Rafah. And it was a young American student from Evergreen College in Washington State named Rachel. And she was in Gaza to stand with Palestinians in her small way to try to lead to a process of peace between Palestinians and Israelis. And she's there, and she sees these Israeli military bulldozers come up on the pharmacist family she had befriended, this Palestinian pharmacist, and she dons that orange fluorescent vest that construction workers wear, and she stands in front of the bulldozer. And the bulldozer crushed her to death. Yes, it was horrifying. This Israeli military bulldozer that's made by Caterpillar in the United States. And That's what I thought of when I saw these people standing in front of the bulldozers. But here they succeeded. And they actually succeeded in forcing the bulldozers to pull back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all moving back. And it was then that the Dakota Access Pipeline guards unleashed the attack dogs on the Native Americans. Attack dogs. And these dogs were biting the Native Americans, and a few were on horseback, and they bit their horses. Even the dogs would pull back, and the guards would throw them into the crowd, and they would have to bite their way out. And it was horrifying. You know, we filmed people who were bitten. We filmed a dog with its nose and mouth dripping with blood. But that day, the Native Americans, however injured and wounded, succeeded. They stopped the bulldozers for that few hours. And that night, we posted on Facebook the video of the attack dogs. And it went viral within 24, 48 hours, like 14 million views on Facebook. So for the corporate media to say, well, we don't cover this just like climate change because people aren't interested in those issues. I mean, I beg to differ. So we interviewed Winona LaDuke that day. She's a Native American indigenous rights activist from White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. She had come there in solidarity with another tribe, with the Standing Rock Sioux. Cheyenne River was there, folks from Pine Ridge were there, not to mention all over the continents. And she had erected her teepee over at Red Warrior Camp, and it had paintings of endangered animals on it. And she said, Governor Dalrymple, the name of the governor of the time of North Dakota, you're not George Wallace. This is not Alabama, 1965. We are through. So we went back to New York that next week to continue broadcasting Democracy Now! And do more on this. And on Friday, the judge was going to rule. On Thursday, Governor Dalrymple called out the National Guard. It didn't look good for the tribe. Also, the authorities quietly issued an arrest warrant for me. Now, I didn't know this at the time, so on Friday at 5 o'clock, the judge ruled, routing of the tribe. Terrible decision. Justice Department prevails. President Obama's Justice Department. Now, President Obama was in Asia that week. He made that historic trip to Laos. And in Laos, he had a democracy forum for young Asian students, and they came from all over. And at the end of the forum, a young woman from Malaysia raised her hand, and she said, President Obama, can you talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline? She asked a question that no American journalist had publicly asked President Obama. You know, he held forth eloquently about the oppression of Native Americans over centuries. And then he actually addressed DAPL, the resistance. I mean, he said, I would have to go back to my team and discuss it. So he came back to the United States before the judge ruled, and he reportedly saw the video of the dogs. And it wasn't lost on the first African-American president of this country, the significance of the dogs. So his Justice Department prevails. The lawyers are presumably about to pop their champagne corks, but not 15 minutes later, a 3-agency letter, unprecedented, comes out from their Justice Department, Interior, and the Army Corps of Engineers saying they're going to slow down. You know, it seems like, I mean, this is clearly coordinated from the White House. Obama, he couldn't know what the judge was going to rule, right? Judges are independent, and no, he didn't call judges, so-called judges. But in this case, he clearly ended up ruling. So a few minutes later, they had this prepared, and they said they're slowing down. They're not going to immediately grant a permit for the pipeline to go under the Missouri. And they'll see if there was Native American input, and they'll see if there was an environmental impact statement and all of this. So, I mean, the Native Americans are experiencing whiplash. First, the worst decision ever, and then, oh my God, the government is not going to move forward or allow the company to move forward, at least for the moment. So we had gone to Canada that day, me and Nermeen Sheikh, co-host Democracy Now! I wasn't fleeing. I didn't know about the arrest warrant. But I was invited to the Toronto International Film Festival to speak after a film premiered about the muckraking journalist I.F. Stone. And for folks who are a little older, you may remember I.F. Stone, this great journalist holding those in power accountable. So it's a story of his life. And he said to young people, if you're going to remember 2 words, remember governments lie. If you can remember 3 words, remember all governments lie. And that's the name of the documentary, All Governments Lie. And then it went on to talk about independent media today, and it featured Democracy Now! And Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone, so Matt came up as well to Canada. So we had this event. I really wanted to talk about the whole no DAPL struggle and what was happening. We just come out of North Dakota. And people care about First Nations in Canada. And the next day we were invited to University of Toronto, so we're speaking there the afternoon. It was a crowd like this. And I was speaking. In the middle of it, I get this text. And I look down and it says, you're under arrest. Now, I mean, it says something like, there's an arrest warrant for you. And okay, I should not be checking my text in the middle of a talk, but wait a second. So I didn't announce it when I was speaking. So, you know, I was trying to operate on 2 tracks. I'm giving a speech and I'm trying to follow my train of thought. And I realize I'm in big trouble. And because I see that it's a North Dakota number. It turned out it was a North Dakota lawyer. And so I'm thinking, you know, what do I do here? You're not going to automatically be picked up if there's an arrest warrant for you. You'll get picked up if you have interaction with police or FBI or border agents, if the arrest warrant is in the system. And I have to go over the border. Can they prevent me from coming back to my country? I mean, or are they going to take me on the border? But I thought if I can get back before this arrest warrant goes into the system, it just melts. And there is no planet B. And people holding signs up that said, I'm with her, with an arrow to Mother Earth. And then all the buttons, science, not silence. And I wanted to end back in World War II with a brother and sister named Hans and Sophie Scholl, who, they weren't Jewish, they were German Christians in Germany. And together with their professor and other students and writers, they thought, what can we do in the face of the Nazi atrocity? And they decided to publish pamphlets to talk about what was going on so that the Germans would never be able to say we didn't know. They published a series of 6 of these pamphlets. On one of them were written the words, we will not be silent. And they had these dropped everywhere, under cover of darkness, marketplaces, schoolyards, alleyways. And Hans, Sophie, and their professor were captured. They were charged, they were tried, they were convicted, and they were beheaded. But that philosophy, that motto, should be the Hippocratic Oath of the media today, should be the Hippocratic Oath of us all today. We will not be silent. Democracy Now!